Hi, and welcome to the National New Teacher Support Podcast, brought to you by New Teacher University. I'm your host, Dr. Terry Ross. This podcast is for teachers and by teachers. The National New Teacher Support Podcast is brought to you by New Teacher University, and we're here to support teacher retention through coaching, mentoring, and wellness. So all of the strategies that we share is going to help teachers, new teachers especially, improve their craft and to help them to be well. And today I'm so excited that we have an award-winning teacher and leader with us, Ms. Diana R. Williams of Diana R. Williams, LLC. She is a former school leader and elementary teacher. She's advised special education teachers seeking certification. She's coached providers, social workers, and school psychologists, and she's consulted with schools in D.C., New York, New Jersey, Chicago, and New Orleans. She is a master teacher, and we are thrilled to have Ms. Diana R. Williams of Diana R. Williams, LLC with us today. She helps educators increase their special education competencies and capacity and impact so that teachers and students are better supported and are more successful. Thank you so much, Ms. Williams, for joining us today. And will you please introduce yourself? Tell us who you are and why did you start Diana R. Williams, LLC?
Definitely. I'm really excited to be here with you tonight. So as you mentioned, my name is Diana Williams. I am a special education consultant that works for educators throughout the country, specifically to increase their special education content knowledge, their capacity, and just overall impacts within their roles. I started my education career in Camden, New Jersey, where I taught first grade. Elementary school is near and dear to my heart, but especially lower elementary school. I've taught kindergarten, first grade, and second grade. I have served as a special education leader in charter schools in the Northeast, and have co-founded a charter elementary school in Brooklyn, New York. Most recently, in addition to my business, I also work as an assistant director of special education for a couple of elementary schools in New Jersey. But specifically in my work, I wanted an opportunity to work with more educators and increase my impact throughout the country. And since founding my own consulting company, it's been a great ride, just learning what schools are doing in the South or in the Midwest, and really having an opportunity to share best practices, to teach them, to also learn from them. And that's what brings me here.
Well, thank you so much. And we're glad that you're here and that you're bringing all of this great experience because I know our audience, our new teachers are just going to learn a lot and they're going to be better for having you here. Now, you shared two things that are near and dear to me. One is that your special ed background, your background is in special education, so is mine. And oftentimes we're that small group over in the corner that kind of, but hey, that's where it's happening at. We know how to make it happen in that department. We can take all of our students, and we truly believe that all children can learn, and we meet them where they are and we move them forward. And I know those are the type of strategies that you're going to share this evening. But you also shared that Lower Elementary is near and dear to you. I love elementary. I started out in high school. At
Okay.
a point in my career, I became an elementary principal. And when I tell you that's where I learned education, that's where I learned what curriculum is all about. I learned what teaching and learning is all about. But it helped me so much when I got back into the high schools as a principal because I knew what those 16-year-old boys were missing. I knew what the young ladies who seemed unsure about themselves, I knew what they were missing because I had seen them at the elementary level. So I'm so excited that you love lower elementary. I love them, but I don't know whether I love that grade level because
Yeah.
I grabbed a book one morning and the sub was late. I said, "Oh, I'll go read to the kindergartners until the sub get here." And everybody looked at me like, "Does he know?" No, I didn't know. I didn't interpret the look. I got in there, so I was going to do dialogic reading, and I'm starting with the cover of the book. So, what do you see on the cover? What color is his shirt? Oh, his shirt is green. Oh, that's great. My granddaddy got a green shirt.
Always,
My
always.
my uncle got a green shirt.
They will send you down the rabbit hole.
I went down
100%.
12 rabbit holes until I said, I don't want to know anything else about your grandma. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't tell them that, but boy, they will take you down a rabbit hole. So I tip my hat to anyone that teaches kindergarten and lower elementary, because that's where the rubber hits the road. That's where we're really grooming our children to be better. So thank you for what you're doing for our children, and thank you for coming to share with us tonight. So tell
Thank
us
you.
about a little bit more about your company and how do you support schools and teachers?
Yes. So when thinking about the work that I do with schools, it can look like one-day PDs where I am delivering trauma-informed care and how to respond to student behavioral challenges. It can also look like a 6-week intensive when I'm working with a subgroup of teachers to specifically observe their classrooms and to share and give best practices and feedback to improve their practice and behavior management within their classrooms. So that's more so on the teacher side. On the leader side, I've facilitated training for non-SPED leaders so that they have a general SPED one-on-one understanding of SPED law and universal design learning practices, differentiation, things like that. And then I also coach special education leaders to just improve their overall department and programming when thinking about least restrictive supports, of classroom placement, of paraprofessionals, and different things like that. I've dabbled a little bit in the advocacy work with parents, but it just gets me too riled up. And because some of the things that happen in schools that they try to get away with, especially with Black and brown children, just doesn't sit well with me. So I'm like, this is
Yes.
not my ministry because I'm just too involved.
Absolutely. And that's what I found myself as a special education teacher, just being way too involved on the other end. So thank you for sharing that. And tonight you're going to share with us uh, 3 strategies to reach your students so that you can teach your students.
Yes,
And I'm
definitely.
listening to this topic. It sounds like you're talking about building relationships and making sure that our students know that they matter.
And I think that's like a buzzword thought, a buzz phrase, right? Build relationship with students. But I think
Hmm.
we don't talk enough about why it's important and
Hmm.
how these relationships serve as the foundation to really get some things going in terms of learning and behavioral success within the classroom.
Absolutely. Relationships gets everything going. If
Hmm.
you don't have relationships, because the thing about the school is the adults are the minority in the building.
Yep.
Now we have majority of the power, we have all the power, but why are you there just wielding power
hmm
when we can
hmm
build relationships? And
Yep. I
those
love the
relationships
phrase
would take
power
care
over
of something.
purpose.
Say again.
Yeah, I love the phrase power over purpose, definitely. Yep.
Yes, absolutely. Power over purpose. Thank you for sharing that. So, what is one of the first strategies that you would share with our audience around reaching our students so that we could teach them?
Definitely. So, in my work over the years, some of the things that I've observed, many to some of the things that you just mentioned, are we have a lot of well-intentioned educators who are getting burnt out, right?
Hmm.
They aren't having the impact that they thought they would have. They're spending hours planning for lessons that they know will hit that don't hit. They are buying the trinkets, they're buying the candy, they're talking to the parents to hoping that behavior will change. They're referring for special education, thinking that that's the answer. They're doing the extra tutoring, all these things with good intentions that's not having the impact that they would have imagined.
Hmm.
And so when we think about relationship building, it's a step beyond that and really knowing your student. And so we all have a couple of students that whenever we go to family events, they're like, how's work and how's my boy Tristan doing? Because you always have stories about them, about what they've said or what they've done, because they're just great children, right?
Yes,
These are the kids that we often love the most. These are the
yes.
kids with the most challenging behaviors, the students that are struggling academically, that are trying really hard, but it's just not clicking for them. These are the students that are sometimes stressing us out and keeping us up at night. But these are also the students that make us better educators because they're constantly pushing our thinking and pushing us to improve our practice. And
Yes.
so when we think about knowing our students, We need to know them both inside the classroom and outside the classroom.
Mhm.
We need to know what's their favorite color. What types of games do they like to play? Who's their favorite cousin? When they go to Pop-Pop's house, what types of things do they do over there, right? If mom and dad have a shared pickup arrangement, how does spending the night at dad's house or spending the night at mom's house affect how they show up in the classroom?
Yes.
Do they have an IEP? If they do, what's their classification and how does their disability manifest within the classroom of how does it look and sound, right? When we know these things about our students beyond the fact that they're good at reading or they're not so good at math, we're able to establish a strong foundation in which we're able to then leverage in order to come up with strong support plans in order to reach them.
Yes, you hit all of that dead on the head. And people will say, well, we don't have time to learn all of that. Yes, we do. We have 170 plus days with our students. And we come in and we listen. I'm an administrator. And as an administrator, I understood, don't tell my people, you're coming in the first day, we're hitting those books and we're learning. No, no. And I hear so many principals say, we're starting from day one serious. I don't want any noise. I don't know. Those first couple of days of school, it's fun. We're getting to know each other. We're finding out what happened over the summer. We're giving them space and time to connect with the people that they knew from last year. Because if you don't stop and do all of those things by October, you're going to have a lot of chaos. However, when you start the school year out doing those things that you said, you're noticing that he's different today. And then you find out, oh, he stayed with mom last night, or he stayed with dad last night, or he stayed with Pawpaw last night. And at Pawpaw house is 7 cousins. And there's no sleep because you found that out. Now, you're not going to find all of that out in day 1 or day 2 or day 3, but you find it out over those first 6 weeks or so of school.
Definitely.
So thank you so much for sharing that. And once they get this information, how can they use this information to help move the student forward and make their life easier?
Yep. So that moves me on to the second thing I want to share. So now that you know your student inside and out the classroom, I want you to plan with your student in mind. So when we know what they like, when we know what they're strong at, we're able to leverage these strengths in order to identify specific strategies to address the challenges and the areas in which is a little bit difficult, right? When we are incorporating, if they like Mario Karts into our plan, it provides students with a little bit of motivation to attempt the things that are a little challenging for them. So quick story. So I had this one student, loved him to death. He had an IEP, he had a speech and language impairment, and he had a diagnosis of ADHD. And when looking at his special education evaluations, he had receptive and expressive language challenges. So that means that not only did he have trouble understanding what people said to him, he also had difficulty expressing what he wanted to say to us. And when I first met him in this particular situation, he was in kindergarten. So writing wasn't a thing yet. So we really had to develop his language to be able to articulate his needs. And when thinking about his ADHD, textbook example, frequently losing focus, lost in his own mind, fidgeting, excessive movements, high energy, all the things. I also learned that he loved playing video games. He loved moving whenever there was an opportunity. He also lived with his mom, his auntie, and his siblings, but his mom had a job that required her to be away from the home for a couple of nights a week. He loved reading, even though it was challenging for him. He didn't care for math too much, but whenever he's in class, he loved to participate. So I would always try to find opportunities. What's the easy thing for him to participate? Whether we're chorally counting, I'll call on him first to recall the numbers that he knows. And so with this information, I was able to do that. I was able to send home extra practice assignments on the nights that I knew that mom was home because she had more time to spend with him. I would pair kinesthetic movements when we're learning and reviewing sight words. So if the word is down, every time we saw it, now it's a race to see between him and I who can bend over and touch the floor the fastest, right? Because that's down. We would create songs and chants so that he can be engaged and sing, but also remember them so that he could apply it and help himself when he approaches tricky words in reading. I also, because of his ADHD, sat him at the front of my carpet and at the front of my desk. That way, I was able to leverage my proximity in order to redirect him without calling him out, without embarrassing him, because I knew he couldn't help it. And incorporating these different things could only work if I knew him and knew what he needed in order to put it all together. And at the end of the year, my boo learned how to read. Right?
Yes.
So that was so exciting. I think that's a great example of how when you know your kid, you can create and identify specific strategies to embed in lessons and throughout the day to set them up for success.
Absolutely. And when you do that, it's not helping just that one kid, all the students are benefiting.
Yeah, I
So
always say,
go on, I'm sorry.
I always say that good
Yes,
teaching is good teaching. And when we
absolutely.
think about special education strategies and practices, this can reach students of all levels when we differentiate. This can reach
Yes,
students with multi-language learners or ESL students. It's just good teaching practices.
absolutely. When I first started in special education, we were using the term modify
Mm,
and more than differentiation, but it's the same thing. You're just modifying it to figure out what do they need to learn this? How would they best learn this information? And we also
mhm.
learn to plan with all learning modalities in mind, the kinesthetic, the visual, the audio, so all of that. So thank you so much for sharing that. So let's move on to strategy 3.
Yes. So working in special education, working in Title I schools, I'm working with students that often have some of the greatest needs in our country. And so it's easy for me and any educator to feel overwhelmed about the amount of work that has to be done, about the amount of growth that needs to happen by the end of the year. And so I learned to celebrate the near win. I
Yes.
recognize that school is hard for kids, right? Sometimes they're trying the best they can with what they got. So celebrating the small wins when compounded on top of each other can have large effects on students. And so what does this look like? I think about students that are exhibiting challenging behaviors. And when trying to conquer a behavior, we need to unpack it into different components so that they're different milestones, for example. So if a student, let's say, frequently elopes and shows aggressive behavior towards adults, the first thing I would do is stop to really collect data to understand what's happening and then to break down why the student is doing the thing that they're doing. This is the function of behavior. In this example, let's say the function is they're trying to escape from doing the work. My first step, even though we have these large behaviors, might be to teach the student to understand that, hey, I feel away right now. I feel mad or I feel sad, and that's okay. Because then once they start to notice the signs that they feel away, then they can start to advocate for themselves for what they need in the moment. Whether it's, hey, I feel away, so I need a break. I need to take a walk. I need to get water. And then eventually we're able to, instead of eloping or leaving the classroom without permission or pushing the desk, they're able to say, hey, I feel away. I need to step out for a second, which decreases the behavior over time.
Yes.
So when thinking about celebrating the near win, whether it's academic struggles, behavior struggles, anything like that, it allows us to put our goals in clearer view so that we know that we're working towards something. It also allows us to gain buy-in from both our students and our families, strengthening the partnership because students see that we're with them. They see that we see them trying and that they know that change is possible. And so once the students feel our presence and our partnership, then they'll meet us halfway. And that's when we know that we've reached them in order to teach them.
Yes. And one of the best ways to develop the growth mindset in children and even in anyone is to celebrate effort
Mhm.
and celebrate effective effort. And I love that you say celebrating near wins because that's letting you know that every time you see them getting a little step closer to where they want to go, when you have a celebration and encourage them, that's an investment.
Mhm.
And we have to invest in children because sometimes they may be coming out of environments where there's not a whole lot of positive affirmations or where there's not a whole lot of success consistently. So in order for us to get them to believe that they can be successful and that they can have agency over themselves and over their life, we have to encourage them and make those investments in their life.
Exactly. And like it doesn't matter how great our lesson is. It doesn't matter how many manipulatives or hands-on activities are. If we don't have buy-in from our students, they will not learn from us.
Yes, yes. And that's the main thing. And we're there to teach children. We're there to teach children. And when we think about child development and understand that most of the time what's frustrating us about children is that they're just acting their age.
100%.
Yes, and when we understand that piece and meet them where they are, I think the day goes better for everyone, not just the day, the entire school year goes better for everyone.
Definitely. And I think what's interesting about that, especially since COVID, is that we have middle school teachers, right? Or older student teachers that are upset because they're like, you should know better. But then when we think about it, the time of education that the student would have learned, explicitly being taught something, they missed it.
Yes.
So now it's requiring teachers in middle school, in high school, in college to break down these things that kids should know, but don't.
Absolutely. Someone reminded me that the kindergartners that are third grade this year, I think, that they learned their letter sounds with the mask on.
And that was so challenging for students with speech impediments, right?
Yes.
Remember, this is an example of intent versus impact. I was like, oh, they need to see my mouth. So I bought these masks. They were masks, but they had like a clear opening.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, this is gonna be great. And we tried them, and of course, the masks were getting all cloudy.
Fogged up. Yes,
This
yes,
did
yes,
not.
yes.
But that is so true. That's a big part of specifically thinking about K1, of teaching them the sounds and forming their mouth the
Absolutely.
correct way that we missed out on.
That phonological awareness and phonemes and all of that, you need to be able to, all of that sounds, and they need to see the mouth, the tongue, they need to see all of that movement so that they can know how to do it. And so that's something that we'll probably be paying for at least the next 6 to 10 years, catching up what happened in the pandemic. So we're going to have to know that those students missed that. And thank you for elevating that piece. That I was just thinking academics, but there are some social things that they miss. There are
So
some
much.
social cues that they may not know because they missed 2 years of it. You were at home online virtually, and you could have on your shirt and pajama bottoms. And there's not a whole lot of social cues there. You could mute when you got ready to do something or say something that you didn't want anyone else to hear. You could turn your camera off. There were so many things that you didn't have to have social cues for. The cue was to shut the camera off.
Yeah.
And now that our students are public, they can't do that. So thank you for elevating that. And I'll remind people sometimes, because I'm always trying to help kids get out of trouble. And I'll just say, hey, they missed that during the pandemic. So give them some grace.
All about the grace for all of us.
Absolutely. All about the grace for all of us. So is there anything else you'd like to share with new teachers about reaching our students so that we can teach our students?
I mean, I think starting there, I think sometimes, and I'm cognizant of this working on a district level, and even when giving resources to parents, sometimes we give folks too many resources that they feel overwhelmed and can't do anything.
Yes.
I am a firm believer in 1% changes. What is one thing that you can incorporate into your practice to make it better? And then once you feel comfortable, then build it on. Don't feel overwhelmed. Don't do too many things because it's not going to help you in the end.
Yeah. I just wrote a book called Micro Learning for Educators. And you notice with my podcast, I put things out and I say another micro learning moment. And I did that because we give these long drawn out PDs at the beginning of the school year, or, if we have a PD day during the year, and we expect teachers to go back and implement those things with fidelity. Well, when we put those snippets out, once we do the big PD, we need to come back with small reminders, small snippets, so that they can be reminded of what it is that they're expected to accomplish with that learning. And it's not just this one big learning moment and then we walk away and never touch it again.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for sharing that. Is anything else you like? No, not anything else you'd like to share. Share one word of encouragement for new teachers. They've almost made it to the end of the school year.
That is it. You made it.
Yes,
Next year will be better.
absolutely. If you made it this far, next year will be better. And the year after that will be even better. And all of a sudden, it's going to be like breathing for you. So just hang in there. We appreciate what you do.
I think a big part for teachers is to really understand their students with disabilities, specifically how their disabilities can look and sound within the classroom. And so I have a great PD that's recorded with resources, specifically diving into ADHD, attention deficit hyperactive activity disorder, ODD, oppositional defiance disorder, and autism. And I provide teachers with specific strategies that you can implement to better set up students for success and yourself for success. So on the screen, you'll see the QR code. You can just scan it, and then you'll have access to both the replay of the PD and the resources.
Thank you so much for that. Now, and do you do work both virtually and in person, or is it just in person?
Both virtually and in person.
So thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you so much, Ms. Williams. We're so glad that we had Diana Williams of Diana R. Williams LLC with us today on the National New Teacher Support Podcast, brought to you by New Teacher University. New teachers, thank you so much for joining us today. I know that you learned a lot about getting to know your students. I know you learned a lot about what we need to do with those students who have been diagnosed with a disability. And we don't say the student have the disability they've been diagnosed with, because in our work is to give them strategies to move forward. So thank you again for joining us on the National New Teacher Support Podcast, brought to you by New Teacher University. I'm your host, Dr. Terry Ross. And remember, teachers, enjoy the journey, because someone wishes they were in your shoes, and you are the reason every day that some student gets up in the morning and come to school. They want to see your face. So thank you. Stay encouraged and hang in there, and you will do great. And again, thank you for joining us on the National New Teacher Support Podcast. And thank you, Ms. Williams.
Thank you.